How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for September 13th through September 19th of 2021. My name is Cam White, and thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I truly love and appreciate every single one of you that can join me here today. As you can see, I switched my desk around because I'm trying to get, the feng shui in my place a little bit right, so new background. I hope you guys like it. It looks a little bit better in my opinion. Second thing, if you want to get early access to my weekly horoscopes, you're seeing these on Sunday. I post these every Friday at my Patreon. You can support my channel as well as get access to commercial free. If you don't like the commercials like I don't, you got to pay for that shit though because it super supports me. And then I'm also posting my October horoscopes next week. I usually post my horoscopes for the month ahead on the 15th of the month before. That kind of sounds confusing. But anyway, if you want to see October's horoscopes and what's going to happen for your zodiac sign, become a patron. I'm going to be putting out my October horoscopes this week over on my Patreon. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with this week. This week fucking sucks. I've been trying to tell you guys, and you see it in the news. You see where things are going. And that's not to say, I hate. It's really annoying being an astrologer and people being like, "Oh, you're just, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fear mongering." It's like, when you look at everything in the news, the whole news is fear mongering. Everything is the world's ending tomorrow and everything like that. So I think it's a pretty ridiculous statement that, I'm fear mongering when I'm literally just reading the fucking astrology. The star says it's bad. That's not me fear mongering. So anyway, this isn't a good week. This is going to be a really challenging week. I'm challenged with this week. Like, this isn't easy for me either. This isn't easy for anyone, but this is a really challenging week. And, just before we even get into the transits, I'm just going to tell you, take a fucking breath. Because, if you think 2020 was hard, this next couple months is going to be really difficult as well. And, this is about kind of like growing up in a lot of weird ways, becoming an adult in a lot of weird ways. This is about, kind of just being mature in a lot of ways. And this is going to be really difficult. But anyway, let's just go straight into it. I forgot to show you guys this. So this is what's going on this week. We're starting this Monday off with the moon in Sagittarius making a square to Neptune and Mars, as well as the moon making a sextile to Jupiter. That has its goods and its bads. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Switching between camera angles while also talking and doing this is really more difficult than I think people understand. Anyway, there we go. Let's actually get to the day I'm talking about. Yeah, moon's going to be squaring Neptune. Well, again, the moon's in Sagittarius, and like I said last week when the moon was in Sag on the south node, there's a sense of, having to move on, having to kind of redefine our vision, redefine our ideals. And as the moon's making a square to Neptune, you can only go so far in your head, right? You can only dream of things so big. And I think as the moon's in Sagittarius, where we're wanting to escape and we're wanting to avoid, for a lot of people, don't avoid this. Don't escape. And this isn't even astrology advice. This is just life advice. Don't avoid shit. Don't try to, you're talking to someone who my whole family's addicts. I've struggled with addiction a lot. There's no need to run away. With the moon squaring Neptune, there's a lot of avoidance with a lot of things. There's a lot of confusion on what to even, address. And I think as the moon's in Sagittarius, where our emotions are really attached to our ideals, where our emotions are really attached to our vision and our beliefs, and the moon's going to be squaring Neptune. Just because we believe something or feel a certain way, that doesn't mean we actually, that's actually right. And I think as the moon's squaring Neptune, there's a confusion over how we feel and how we feel about our beliefs and our worldview versus, does that actually shape up to reality? I truly think Neptune is a malefic planet, and I don't think that this transit is very helpful. And, one of my pieces of advice here is just, make up something in your head, but don't think that that's exactly what you see. You know what I mean? Just because you see in a Hollywood movie that, someone could jump from building to building, that doesn't mean you could jump from building to building. It's fun to fantasize about, and I think that's what's good about the moon in Sagittarius squaring Neptune. It's fun to fantasize, but you got to understand what's real and what's not, and I think you should be, and this is the thing, the moon's also going to be sextiling Jupiter. There's room to grow, there's room to learn, but you have to kind of weigh out what is realistic versus what is just idealistic. And what's hard about all of this is the moon's here, right? This is involving our emotions, and when our emotions are involved in these type of topics, it makes delineating it much more difficult. And that's also to say, once the moon will make a square to Neptune, so we're going to feel just more confused and lost and wanting to just avoid everything because it's too much. Then the moon's going to sextile Jupiter, where it's like, I said this last week and a few people commented on this. When I was like a kid, all the frustration, you should just go run away and smoke cigarettes. That's kind of, and when I did that, that allowed me the space to kind of think about my emotions and give myself, some breathing room so I wasn't just reacting in that moment. And, the moon's going to sextile Jupiter. Maybe you do need to get away a little bit. This isn't about avoiding situations and running away from situations, but giving yourself space, I think, is really important on Monday as the moon makes that sextile to Jupiter. But then after the moon makes a sextile to Jupiter, the moon is then going to be applying to a square with Mars and Virgo. And there's no, dude, it's Mars and Virgo and it's combust. There's certain things that you're going to have to handle and face that you're not going to want to face. The moon's going to be in Sagittarius where it just wants to see the bigger picture, but Mars and Virgo is very actually and very orderly and neat. And I think as the moon's making the square to Mars and applying that square to Mars, it's it's really hard. You guys are spiritual people. When you talk to atheists, which, God, atheism is fucking dumb. But when you talk to atheists, there's this sense of oh, but everything is, they can't think in an expanded way, right? They can't be open-minded. And so when you have the moon and Sagittarius squaring Mars and Virgo, you're not going to get your point across to someone who's not open-minded to that. So my suggestion is just what's hard about this is it's the moon. Your emotions are going to be involved, and that's going to trigger you in a lot of ways as the moon's squaring Mars. So just don't get your emotions involved. Not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to be on your side. And, this isn't an agree to disagree thing, but if you're going to try to expand someone's mind, then you're going to work. Mars and Virgo is very this is what, the list says. This is what, the quote-unquote facts say. This is the fact sheet I have. This is the data set I have. So there's really no winning, with the moon squaring Neptune and squaring Mars, right? So the big thing here is try to be hopeful. Try to just be much more open-minded. Try to be much more forgiving. And I know that's really hard, but I'm telling you this. I mean, if you live in America, if you're alive in 2021, doesn't matter where you are, we really got to learn how to be much more accepting and forgiving and willing to. I mean, we're having all of these Libra transits coming up. That's going to be a bigger challenge as time goes on. Which brings us into Tuesday. On Tuesday, we're going to have the moon move into Capricorn, and then the moon will sextile Venus, which is pretty cool. But then Mars enters Libra, which completely changes the theme of this week. Notice that I have it circled in red. I didn't just underline it, I circled it. And I did that for a reason. This is not a fun transit. The moon's going to go into detriment, right? The moon doesn't like to be in Capricorn, but I'm a broken record with this stuff. Our emotions and how we feel on the inside. We don't always show people how we feel on the inside, right? The moon isn't always full. The moon isn't always bright. Sometimes the moon's hidden behind the sun, behind our ego. And so as the moon, it's actually gaining in light at this moment. As the moon's in Capricorn, our emotions are really fixated on that Saturnian stuff, where we feel maybe trapped, where we feel uncomfortable, maybe where we feel like we can't actually express our emotions. Why I said I'm a broken record is because I always usually say when the moon's in Capricorn, it's like when you're, if you're dealing with a breakup, if you got broken up, you got dumped right before you go into work, you just can't sit there and cry at work. You got to go to work. You got to kind of leave your emotions at the door. And that isn't always fun. You know what I mean? I think as the moon's in Capricorn, there's a sense of, being limited with how you feel, being, and not being able to express, not being able, and not feeling safe to be able to express your emotions and how you feel. And there's this sense of compartmentalizing your emotions and trying to, rather than feel your emotions, try to do something with them, which, the moon's going to be sextiling Venus and Scorpio. And I talked about last week, Venus and Scorpio sucks. And not that if you have Venus and Scorpio, you're fine. You're fine. It's not that big of a deal, really. But the transiting Venus and Scorpio symbolizes a period in which the things that we enjoy aren't necessarily really scratching the itch at the moment, right? And so as the moon's in Capricorn, sextiling Venus and Scorpio, misery loves company. Truly, it does. And as the moon is sextiling Venus and Scorpio, This might be a thing where Venus is in Scorpio, and what we want is like what we want to connect, what we want to enjoy. We're not getting out of all of it that we want. We're really it's kind of like gambling. I live in Vegas, so a lot of people are gambling addicts here. But if you throw a 20 in the slot machine and you hit max bet and you don't win anything, well then it's like you try it again, and you try it again, and you try it again. Like you're going to try to force a situation that shouldn't really be forced. But what's interesting about this transit is Mars enters Libra. Now, why is Mars in Libra bad? 1, Mars is a malefic planet. It rules bad things. It rules fights. It rules conflicts. It rules inflammation. Well, I just spit everywhere. It rules separation. It rules cutting. It rules fights, arguments, all that stuff, right? Mars is entering detriment. One of my favorite, things with Mars and detriment, where you might think, oh, the bad planet is in a bad sign. Maybe that's, 2 wrongs don't make a right, which is really an important concept to understand with Mars and Libra because, for example, with Mars and Taurus, unsharpened blade is usually more dangerous than a sharp one. A gun that can misfire, a gun that can, have all these problems is more dangerous than a functioning gun. And that's the problem that you get with Mars and Libra. Mars is about, again, if you are trying to cut something that's very thick with a really dull blade, you have more of a chance of that blade being broken and harming yourself or other people. And so that's why I really, Mars and Libra, again, if you've got these placements, you can't take this shit personally. You really can't. This could be, for example, like clients that I have with Mars and Libra. I always try to tell them, you're not a fighter. You're not a fighter. You're not. You are a negotiator. That's the thing with Mars and Libra. So another analogy I'd like to use with Mars and Libra. When you talk about being in court, I don't know if you guys ever had a court date. I used to get into a lot of trouble when I was a kid. I've been in front of a judge a lot of times. And the one thing that I've learned when it comes to a judge is they will judge you. And when you go to court, I'm going to give you some advice. You've never been to court before. Look better than your fucking wedding day. It will truly make a difference. And this is what's sad. You get people who go to court and unfortunately can't afford nice clothes. They can't, afford even the time to go out and get nice clothes. And a judge will literally judge them for that. But also though, and again, that is an unfortunate thing. But here's the other thing though. If you actually try to present yourself nicely and look good, that will actually help you. Shutting up and not fighting will actually help you. The one Mars is in Libra. If you're in a courtroom, you acting aggressively, you banging on the table and being mad, that's not a good look. Especially with someone that can really, fuck over your life. Now, what's interesting about this, though, and here's the other thing. Let me just kind of get over the little nitty-gritty details. Mars and Libra. We're going to feel indecisive. We're going to feel like, Mars wants to fight, right? But Mars is in Libra. It's like, we really can't. This is much more about negotiating. Let's say you're in a courtroom and, a judge is telling you this, and that, and you want to fight against that, but you can't. You got to shut the fuck up for a minute. And as Mars is in Libra, it's going to be really difficult. Mars doesn't like that, right? Mars wants to fight. Mars wants to be aggressive, but Mars in Libra, it's like you're going to dig yourself more in a deeper hole than you might fucking think. And we're going to feel indecisive. Mars and Libra, we're going to feel compelled to act for others rather than in our self-interests, which Mars doesn't really like. Mars wants to be much more self-interested versus Mars and Libra's like doing things for other people, taking actions based on other people, and all of that stuff. And look, I'll talk about that later. Mars is going to go into Libra. We're going to feel indecisive. We're going to feel angry, but we're going to feel like it's like, what's the point of fighting? But this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Is now we have Mars and Venus in each other's sign. This is what we call mutual reception. Now, the way I like to analogize this is it's pretty much like wife swap, where, two people pretty much become, live each other's lives. And they hate it, but typically there's a sense of sympathy and understanding that they can get from one another from living in these positions. And Venus is in Scorpio. Venus wants to be fun and connect, but she's in Mars' sign, where Mars is like, I feel like Venus in Libra is like, I can imagine like a K-pop type of girl who really likes the fun, bubbly music, going to like an underground hardcore show where like where I'm from the IE, and like I used to go to hardcore underground shows all the time, and like, dude, in the IE, like a lot of hardcore bands are like big cholo dudes, where like they'll get in the pit and they'll fuck you up, like just straight violence in the pit. And like, imagine a K-pop girl going to like her first underground hardcore show, being like, like this is a little intense. But Mars is like the really hardcore person going to like a K-pop show. But that's a little bit different because every hardcore person loves like fun gay music like that. That's not offensive to K-pop. K-pop fans, Army, don't cancel me. I love K-pop, I swear to God. But what I'm trying to say here is, though, Venus is in Scorpio, where Venus is like, about connection, right? And in Scorpio, Venus is like, hey, look, like, these intense subjects are what really gets me off. It's really what excites me. Venus in Scorpio is like the meaning, the passion, the depth, the going without, right? Like Venus in Scorpio is like going without pleasure. Venus in Scorpio is like going without the goodness, right? And Mars in Libra is also kind of like going without the fighting. So it's a really weird place to be in, and I don't want you guys to just think this is how it's going to be. I want you to be open to interpreting. Again, I'm a big promoter of think for your fucking self. Like, have your own experience with this. But I think also as Mars goes into Libra, it will make Venus in Scorpio easier. And as Venus is in Scorpio, it's going to make Mars in Libra a little bit easier. So this isn't just all the way bad, even though this is a shitty week. I'm going to get to that. But as Mars is in Libra, you got to pick and choose your fights. And as Venus is in Scorpio, it's like, you're going to be like, but. And it's just like, you got to shut up sometimes. As the moon's in Capricorn, it'll make that square to Mars, and then it goes into Capricorn, sextiles Venus in Scorpio. It's like, look, if you're upset about something, find a way to get around that. Like the moon's in Capricorn. Like sometimes working and putting your mind to something will help you work through your emotions rather than just sitting in your emotions and sulking in the pain. Really, like if you can find something like to a task to put your energy into, it will be easier to process your frustrations, your anger, your sense of fear. And so Tuesday, as Mars enters Libra, there's really the sense of having to negotiate, right? So example, with Mars in Libra, it's like if you're a criminal in a courtroom, don't say anything. Look nice. Look like you fucking care about the thing. You know what I mean? And maybe there's going to be room for negotiation. And Venus in Scorpio is going to be a little bit difficult. But, as the moon's kind of in Capricorn, this is one of those things. Like, if you're in a courtroom and you're emotional about it, you got to leave those emotions at the door. You're in court. This is real life, and you got to actually pay attention. So again, and again, I can't emphasize this enough with the astrology and the spiritual people. This isn't all, good vibes and karma and all this shit. Like, this is your fucking life. Like, this is reality. How are you going to, handle every single day? Are you going to just think, blah, blah, like, the spiritual community truly has some harmful beliefs, I think, when it comes to the passiveness of real life issues. And as an astrologer, it's just really hard to deal with because I try to be a realist. I'm far from perfect, and I also try to be optimistic. But what I'm trying to say here is like, you just got to be here in the moment. You can't think that life's just going to get better one day and everything's going to be amazing. Sometimes life just fucking sucks. Like I know I preach all the time about like when my dad died. If I went over all of the shit I had to go through with that, there's no like winners in that situation. Like, it pretty much just fucking sucked, and that's about it. That's the end of the fucking story. It sucked. And there was no winners. There was no happy ending. There was no lessons learned. And I'm sure all of you guys have stories about that too, where, you know what, you just kind of got fucked over and you kind of just have to move on. You're in court right now. You're going to have to just kind of deal with it. Sure, you don't want to be in court. Sure, you may not even think that you are rightfully in court, but guess what? You're in court. So, anyway, we get to Wednesday. Sorry, I'm just like... just getting real. You know what I mean? Anyway, we get to Wednesday, and on Wednesday, the moon's going to be squaring Mercury, which, that comes with its issues. And the moon's also going to conjoin Pluto. So, when we go to the moon squaring Mercury, that's just hard to communicate. Mercury's in shadow, so again, you just got to be like... whatever conversations are happening right now, or even announcements is a better word, I think, for the more objective view of things, We're going to come back over this stuff. Nothing is set in stone right now, guys. You have to be, just know where, I mean, okay, you've been watching astrology for a while now. You know these Mercury retrograde things. We know we come back to this. This shouldn't be shocking news. We're going to come right back to the spot. So just, something with the moon in Capricorn squaring Mercury, if someone says something that, maybe that's not how they felt and it's like not actually what they meant, like just, you got to be okay with that. Like, again, you've got to learn, we've got to have some room in our hearts to forgive people. And we have to have some room in our hearts. And you're talking to a very angry person. I struggle with this all the time, but this is why I'm also saying it, because I know I need to hear it too. And I think as the moon's in Capricorn squaring Mercury, you got to learn how to be forgiveful, because I think as the moon squares Mercury, that's a miscommunication right there. How you feel and how you express how you feel isn't actually lining up with the words that you're saying, right? Like Mercury's ruler is in detriment, the moon is in, fall. It's going to be difficult to actually express how you feel, like that's for sure. And then after the moon squares Mercury, it's going to conjoin Pluto, where there's this kind of, I wouldn't say irrational, some of it is rational, but just fear, like anxiety. The moon's on Pluto, like fuck, like, overthinking the conversation, overthinking the situation. The moon is trining the sun in Virgo, which, I'm not trying to just be all doomsday here, which I'm really not. There's a lot of other astrologers who are much worse than I am, and I really hate that people think that I'm a fucking fearmonger. Anyway, the moon's going to also be trining the sun in Virgo. So if you're like, again, I've been talking about the sun in Virgo as like the back to school stuff. What is good for this? If you are going through it and you need something to do, get organized. Plan. Get your, it's earth sign stuff. Like, line up all your ducks in a row. Do something tangible. If this was air transits, I'd say, like, have a conversation with someone. If this was water transits, I'd say, express something. If this was fire transits, I'd say, feel something and, like, go and, be passionate. But this is earth transits. It's the sun and the moon and earth signs. Be realistic. Be tangible. Like, do things that are tangible. Do things that ground you. And I think that'll really help you out this week. So Wednesday is just, the moon squaring Mercury, conjoining Pluto, which brings us to Thursday. Thursday, moon enters Aquarius. Hold on one second. Sorry, I had to turn on my fan and my AC. I'm like starting to sweat really bad. Anyway, TMI probably, but Thursday, moon's going to enter Aquarius. Moon's then conjoin Saturn. Ooh. It's going to trine Mars. I should say the moon's going to enter Aquarius, trine Mars, conjoin Saturn, but Venus is squaring Saturn. Now, I didn't even know this until I was writing this horoscope down. This is actually kind of crazy. Venus is squaring Saturn at the exact same degree that the Mercury-Mars transit's going to happen at. Like, let me show you. Let me show you real quick. So we'll do this. Let's go to November 10th. Wow. Sometimes I hate Astro Gold. Like, why is it doing both of these? Anyway, well, I guess I can't show you because Astro Gold doesn't seem to have the fucking... Anyway, I sometimes fucking hate Astro Gold. Anyway, I can't show you that because... Or actually, let me do this. Let me save the chart so it won't move. Oh, but it still moves! Why are you doing that, Astro Gold? Oh my god, I fucking hate Astro Gold. I'm gonna make a video about... Don't get me wrong. I also love Astro Gold. I use this shit every day, and I use it for a reason because it's the best, but also, man, does it really have some really irritating problems with it. But anyway, all you guys need to know, I talked about this. The Mercury-Mars conjunction in Scorpio, squaring Saturn, exact same degree. 7 degrees Scorpio, 7 degrees Aquarius. So whatever happens on Thursday, we're going to come back again to in November 10th. So that's like 2 months out from this day. So like, just kind of really pay attention or make a mental note or, journal it, write it down. But as we get into Thursday, moon's going to enter Aquarius. The moon and Aquarius transits haven't been fun. Our emotions, we might feel very, moon and Capricorn, right? Capricorn's a cardinal sign that initiates, that begins. It's very, I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, but like very positive. Versus Aquarius, it's a fixed sign, right? We're talking about like consistency, things staying stable. Well, it's squaring Uranus, so stability is kind of up in the air. But as the moon goes into Aquarius, this is kind of like, okay, our emotions are going to be really attached to, I don't want to say ideologies or beliefs. I've been really struggling defining the Aquarius stuff because the Aquarius is so much more of like of a mindset. It's a fixed idea, right? The air signs are all ideas. They're all intellectual air stuff, right? It's, communication, it's relationships. And in Aquarius, it's like community stuff. And I think as the moon is in Aquarius, there's this sense of both, for one, disconnecting or connecting to your communities, depending on your certain situation. But as the moon enters in Aquarius, there's this sense of like, okay, let's think about things. The moon in Capricorn is kind of stuffy. The moon in Aquarius is pretty much the same transit, but at least the windows are open and there's a little bit of air coming through now, right? Like the way I really like to analogize Capricorn versus Aquarius is, again, I talk a lot of shit on boomers, and this is not an attack on boomers, but as a Gen Z, and my millennial followers will understand, but my Gen Z followers get it, we noticed the Capricorn stuff doesn't work anymore, but we still need rules, we still need systems, we still need certain ways of doing things, but we have to redefine how those work. That's the Aquarius stuff, right? So as the moon goes into Aquarius, we're kind of like, okay, how do we keep this going? How do we keep this moving along? Moon's going to trine Mars in Libra. So I actually do like that as kind of like okay, maybe the judge, if we're going to go back to this courtroom analogy, maybe the judge is kind of actually cool. Maybe he's in a good mood the day. Moon's in Aquarius, trining Mars in Libra. Like, hey, sucks that you're here. Let me see if I can give you some leniency. I'm not too worried about it. But the moon is going to conjoin Saturn. This is feeling kind of trapped. This is feeling two things here. You're going to feel trapped or stuck with certain, modes of thinking when it comes to, communities, groups of people, your networks, as well as just your I really do struggle with the word that I'm trying to look for, like ideas that encapsulate like groups of people, right? And we're kind of going through that as a society right now. But I think as the moon conjoins Saturn, there's two things. One, you're either going to feel trapped and limited by that, or you're going to have to take on a lot of responsibility. Moon conjoining Saturn is like, let's say if we go back to this courtroom analogy, you're going to have to say like, plead guilty or not guilty, or this sense of, having to come on. Like a lot of this is being honest. But what I don't like though is Venus squaring Saturn. This is going to be a shitty transit. It is going to be very uncomfortable. In my opinion, this and November 10th are the two worst transit days. The moon in Aquarius squaring Venus and Scorpio. Again, and I talked about this last week. You can fight and scream all you want. It's just not going to do anything. As much as you, again, and this is what's sad, is you could even be right. You could be right. You can be justified. You can be everything. But because of the situation that things are, it's just not going to get you that far. Take the path of least resistance. Truly, if you are hitting a wall on this day and you say, fuck it, I'm going to keep pushing, you're going to get yourself into more trouble. It's the same thing with a cop. If you're dealing with a cop, sure, fuck cops. I've always been fuck cops. And if you're, not that I'm like ACAB or whatever, but just cops are never really your friend. But the idea is that you kind of want to work with them because if you go against what they say, well, guess what? They can just shoot you for whatever reason. But you gotta go with the flow of things for the moment. No one likes to get pulled over, but if you fight with the cops, you're really just going to dig yourself more into a rut. And I think as Venus is in Scorpio, we're feeling uncomfortable. We're not having a good moment. We're not having a good day. Venus is in Scorpio, where we're not enjoying the things. It's one of those things too, where have you ever just really just been in a bad mood? Maybe you had a shitty breakfast and then you got cut off, and then maybe you didn't have sex the night before, and there's this sense of just nothing's going your way, and then you get challenged with something that you could either pop the lid off of or take a deep breath and just move past it. That's Thursday. I think Venus in the superior position squaring Saturn is, I think, a lot of fears. I think a lot of uncomfortability. I think a lot of, a specific aesthetic is going to counteract with the greater whole of society, with where we need to be responsible of. I think Venus in Scorpio is something that's very, again, you gotta have to be the bigger person in a lot of situations. And this is it. This is where I'm really pushing something on you guys that is extremely challenging, but being the bigger person. Because Venus in Scorpio squaring Saturn is for example, if a kid tells you that you're ugly, or a kid tells you some bullshit, are you gonna yell at him? Are you gonna scream at the kid? Are you gonna be like, well, you're wrong? Are you? I mean, if you do, that's on you, but you're not gonna get very far. I think as Venus is in the superior position squaring Saturn, it's ugly, it's not what you want, but I think as the moon is applying to the square with Venus, applying to the square with Saturn, again, it'd be different if the moon was in Scorpio on top of Venus. I would be much more like, you're going to say, hey, this doesn't look good enough for me to justify what I need to do, versus the moon's on top of Saturn. You're going to have to take responsibility of something. You're going to have to say, hey, look, this is where I sit on the side of something. This is where I believe on something. And not everyone's going to like that. Not everyone is going to like your decisions. Not everyone's going to like your choices. Venus square Saturn, also, not everything is going to go the way that you want it to. I think as Venus is in Scorpio too, maybe you're wanting something to work out really good. You're wanting something to go according to plan, and it's just not. And at the very minimum, this is a delay. At the very minimum, let's say, for example, you ordered a cake. At the very minimum, it's just maybe you'll get the cake, but the cake kind of looks like shit. But hey, you still got a cake. You know what I mean? Venus is still Venus. Venus isn't all bad. Venus still has to enjoy something, but Venus in Scorpio likes being edgy. Venus in Scorpio likes the more intense stuff. Venus in Scorpio likes to take it there. Venus in Scorpio is like, what does it mean? And how deep can we go? But it's squaring Saturn where like, you can entertain certain arguments, but you got to have a boundary. What do you stand for? What do you not stand for? And I think that really comes into question on Thursday. And I'm really emphasizing this because this feeling continues with us for a while, right? Mars is now in Libra. Mercury's getting ready to retrograde. Venus is going to continue to be in Scorpio. Then we're going to have Mars go through Scorpio and square Saturn at the same exact degree. This is so important. With Venus, when we talk about what we enjoy, what is fun, pleasure, going without something, doing less, enjoying, Venus in Scorpio is like enjoying death. Death is a beautiful thing, truly. That's why do you think fall is so fucking pretty? All of the leaves, everything around you is dying, yet all we do is gaze in awe on how beautiful fall is. The colors and the feelings and the weather, and we can wear more clothes. Like, death is a beautiful thing. And you can find beauty in a lot of the intense stuff. But I think as Venus and Scorpio squaring Saturn, you're not going to feel it in that moment, but that's important because it's not about feeling it in that moment. But just know that feeling will come, but you've got to be, like, this is, my biggest advice here is just don't get in a trap. Don't get in a trap. Don't get set up for something. Just because, I think also with Venus and Scorpio, just because you want a certain outcome, just because you want a certain thing, Venus is in Scorpio, Mars in Libra. It's like, maybe if we go to that courtroom analogy, maybe the prosecution is really saying some shit about you. They're like, yeah, we're going to go off on you. And that might not even be true, but it's Mars in Libra. You're just going to have to take it for a minute. Venus is going to square Saturn, though. That just because, someone could pick out the worst in you, someone can see the worst in you, that doesn't mean, here's the reality. You got to define who you are. And I think as Saturn's in Aquarius, it's retrograde. We're getting ready for Saturn to station direct. And this is something I talk a lot about with my clients. I don't know if I've actually talked about this too much on my YouTube. But Saturn going direct is like, let's say you've worked at a company for a long time and then you get a management position. That's Saturn going direct. They're like, here's all these new responsibilities and rules, but with that comes more authority, comes more like, power. But then Saturn stations retrograde where, okay, you're the manager now, and now you have a customer. Like, I work in Vegas, so like, let's say when I worked on the Strip, you would have like a homeless person who's like fucking drunk and twacked coming into the store and causing all these issues, and guess who had to handle it? The manager. And that's not a fun situation to manage. That's not a fun situation to take care of, right? So Saturn being retrograde is like, with more power comes more responsibility. With more, more money, more problems, essentially, right? But as Saturn stations direct, there's a comfort that you grow with it. There is a sense of accepting the authority, accepting that role, accepting that power. I talked about this in my delineation episode, the last one I did, of you got to enjoy the work that you have and the work that you do. It's not always going to be fun, but you're going to have to just take that responsibility on. And I think as the moon's conjoining Saturn, squaring Venus and Scorpio, again, Saturn's the one in domicile here. Sure, Venus is in the superior position. Sure, Venus is going to have a lot of the say. Venus is driving right now, but Saturn's in domicile. Saturn actually knows what's going on, not Venus. And so I think as Saturn's in Aquarius, it's still retrograde. We're getting ready for Saturn's station direct. Just know this is a part of it. This is about kind of like, I think a lot of Saturn in Aquarius is like, what ideologies, what reality what's sad is in this day and age, what reality are you subscribing to? And I mean, that's not even most people's fault. Most people are just given so much shitty information on every side. But I think as, the moon conjoins Saturn, this is kind of saying, this is an interesting story. So there's a YouTube channel here that I really like. It's called Active Self-Protection. Regardless of what your opinions are on gun stuff, what I like about this guy's videos is that he really breaks down like people getting robbed, people getting shot at, and he breaks down like security camera footage, and he kind of goes over like, hey, what worked in this situation and what didn't work. And something he talks a lot about that I think really some piece of advice that's actually changed my life is he talks a lot about waiting your turn. Like, for example, there is this video, you might be able to look it up. He's got a bajillion videos. But there's this video where this guy's at an ATM and two people come in with a gun and they rob him. And now the guy actually has a gun on him, but he doesn't do anything. He listens, he presses the ATM button, he takes out that cash and he hands it to them. And then one guy with the gun turns around and what he says is he calls this waiting your turn. And one guy turns around and when he's not paying attention, then he pulls out his gun and shoots both the guys. This is what I'm talking about when I see this. You've got to wait your turn. Going back to the courtroom analogy, if the prosecution or whatever is going off on you, it ain't your turn. Wait your turn. And another thing this guy says, John Crea, he says, wait your turn and take your turn, which is like... Truly, you could apply that in so many areas in life. Not only to wait for your turn, but then actually taking it when it happens. And this isn't it yet. Wait your turn. That's all I can really say for Thursday. Is just, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Feedback is oftentimes harsh, but always fair. And, it's going to be cringy. It's not going to be fun. But that's life. I think you should make the most out of it by learning something out of it. Like, truly... get something from this situation so you don't have to repeat it again, or at least the next time you're a little bit more, better prepared. So anyway, that brings us to, I'm like fucking monologuing. I mean, I'm not monologuing. This is my YouTube channel. That's what I do. Anyway, and the reason I really wanted to hit on Thursday is because as you see, not a lot happens over the weekend. Friday, we have the moon making a trine to Mercury, conjoining Jupiter. I like this. Here's a day I do like for all the seeing of a fearmonger. The moon is going to make a square to Uranus, so there is some, something in the courtroom can destabilize the energy. Something can throw a wrench in your plans, but the moon's going to be in Aquarius, making a trine to Mercury, conjoining Jupiter. If you're in that courtroom, and let's say the prosecution's being like, I mean, they're going off on you. You could sit there and go, blah, 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 and then, be a whiny little baby about it. Or you could take a deep breath. You can have your facts. And you can express what you have to express when it's your turn. And I think as the moon is making that trine to Mercury and applying to Jupiter, you got to be honest. You've got to be able to, and I talked about this in my Mercury retrograde video. Mercury is in Libra. Try to make those connections. Try to negotiate something, right? Try to reach out onto the other side. Try to be much more open-minded with things. Venus is now separated from Saturn. We got the hard part out of the way. Now we really have to grow up. We have to, moon's conjoining Jupiter. We got to see the bigger picture here. We got to be willing to integrate. We got to be willing to forgive. We got to be willing to expand our thoughts on this, right? And the moon's going to be conjoining Jupiter. It's not that it's the best situation, but we have to find the best in the situation, right? And I think as the moon is trining Mercury in Libra with the moon in Aquarius, talk about things in a very open way. Honesty really is the best policy. And I know that shit's corny. But isn't it? Lying only gets you farther into your shit. Being honest actually, at least you're being honest. At least you have your virtues and your values. Anything as the moon's conjoining Jupiter, trining Mercury, this is going to roll over the heavy emotions of Thursday. This is talking it out, not being so emotionally invested into the story, being much more getting our emotions aside from it, being able to just express from an honest place, liking it, which brings us to Saturday. The moon then goes into Pisces and trines Venus. Well, the moon's going to go into Pisces. So as far as our emotions go and how we feel, we're getting ready for the full moon in Pisces, so we're about to feel it. But the moon's going to go into Pisces. Our emotions are adaptable. They're changeable. There's this sense of like, okay, now that we got through that courtroom, the day one of the court case is over, you're going home and being like, fuck, I feel all types of different ways. The moon is going to be applying to a trine with Venus and Scorpio. I like the moon applying to Venus, right? Like, of course I like that. The only thing I'm just a little bit skeptical with the moon trining Venus is just kind of like, with Venus and Scorpio, it's just super easy to be a party pooper with everything. Like, oh, well, it's not perfect. I don't want it. The moon in Pisces is so like, you might be okay with something, but then you're not okay with something. And like, you might feel a certain way, but then you might feel another way. And so just trying to be like, for one, it's good to be adaptable. It's good to be changeable. But I think as the moon's applying to Venus, again, in order to make those connections and be honest, like this is like, you got to be emotionally, like you're never going to connect to someone if that heart chakra, if you are emotionally blocked, you're not going to make those connections. That's like, I don't even know what, psychology 101 or just human relations 101. Like, you got to be able to have that empathy. You got to be able to have that sympathy and being able to say like, hey, I feel you, right? And as the moon, is making that trine to Venus and Scorpio, I think this isn't necessarily misery loves company, but this is definitely being able to express your anger, express your disgust, express how, you're not enjoying anything, but this is giving yourself room to feel those things. The moon in Pisces is give yourself room to feel this stuff. Right? You can't put these feelings on the back burner. And I know a lot of you guys do. I'm guilty a lot of that too. But I think as the moon's in Pisces, we have to find a way to be able to have room for this stuff, have a safe place for this stuff. And I think too, if you bottle your emotions, you never get an opportunity to examine them. But if you express them, then you can go, well, now that it's off my chest, I feel a little bit better. And then you're like, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. And anyway, I think on Saturdays, the moon is going into Pisces. The moon's really just going to be void for the most of the day and then goes into Pisces. So this is kind of like nothing's really going to happen and then everything's going to kind of get a little bit weird and mushy, which then leads us to Sunday. Sunday, moon's conjoining Neptune before the full moon in Pisces. Really, that's not that big. The only thing I don't like is the moon's on top of Neptune. You're going to feel confused. You're going to feel lost. You're not going to know what's right, what's wrong. You're not going to know who to trust, who not to trust. Again, too, Neptune and Pisces is truly, the media is not your friend. It really isn't. It's not real. A lot of this stuff is, both in, even the Hollywood movie stuff and just like even news stuff, it's very contorted. And I think as the moon is conjoining Neptune, there's two options. You can get either lost in the sauce completely or, realize, again, I usually talk a lot about the moon and Pisces on top of Neptune is like being on acid. Yes. The walls are visually going crazy, but it's not real. It's in your head. And like, enjoy the experience of being on a hallucinogen. Enjoy the experience of getting out of that rut, but it's not the exact reality that everyone else sees, right? So it's just, you've got to be, again, when the moon's in Scorpio making that trine to Neptune, don't be making up stories in your head because it's just going to get you in trouble. The moon on top of Neptune is like, just because you saw something once on acid doesn't mean it's actually real. Just because you saw, Tobey Maguire and Spider-Man stop a train, that doesn't mean he actually did it. Like, and you've got to be able to have both sides of enjoy the fantasy, but also have one foot in reality, which is a lot harder than it sounds. And that's Sunday. I think Sunday, that builds up to Monday's full moon in Pisces, where that's a whole nother story. But let's talk about it next week. Full moon in Pisces, sun's in Virgo, You know, I talked about this last year, and I really love this analogy, so I'm probably going to keep it. But full moon in Pisces is like sun in Virgo. Like, you know your musical notes, you know your scales, you know your chords, you know your riffs or whatever. And as a musician, you don't just like, you know, a lot of music is just doing things in the moment, channeling that. But it's easier, like, as a drummer or a guitar player, for me, I'm a guitar player, now that I'm much more comfortable with like my finger movements and my scales and everything, I can kind of diddle up any type of riff that I can truly express myself because I have the list of things that I know how to do, right? Same thing as a drummer. If I'm not comfortable with my hits, if I'm not comfortable with my body language, if I'm not comfortable with my sense of rhythm, it's going to be hard for me to actually play and express in an artistic way. Well, it's the same thing if you're an artist. If you know your strokes and you know your color theory and you know all that stuff, when you know all of those specifics, then you can actually fully express because you're not limited by the information that you know. And I think the full moon in Pisces is very like, you've got all the information, now, like, you've got all the tools, now make the art. Also next week, Mercury trines Jupiter. Hey, that's a positive transit, right? Mercury trine Jupiter, being able to maybe think about things in an open-minded way, reaching out to the other side. That's going to be important because Mercury and Jupiter both stationed direct at the same day in October. We'll get to that, but you should already know that because you watched my Mercury retrograde video, right? Anyway, Venus will also go opposite Uranus. That sucks, but honestly, it's really not the worst of our problems. Mars is also going to trine Saturn. I actually don't like Mars trine Saturn, the more I think about it, to be honest. The two malefics teaming up together, trining, I don't think I like that. And then also next week, technically this is not next Monday, but the Monday after, like Sunday night, next Sunday night, Mercury stations retrograde. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. All of this shit that we're going over right now, we're going to come right back over. Nothing is in concrete right now. Just because you're in a courtroom and just because the prosecution's going crazy or the judge is going crazy or whatever, it's not set in stone yet. Like, perfect example is the OJ trial. The whole time you're watching the OJ trial, you're like, there's no way he's walking. You're like, there's no way this guy's walking away. And he did. So be open-minded to it, right? I want you guys to, like, just this week, I really want you guys to take a breath. This is going to be a hard winter, and really the only way to get through it is to go through it. And I think the only way to be able to go through it is really kind of accepting that that's what's happening and not denying it, not living in an alternate reality, not being checked out. Check in. This is your fucking life. Are you just going to be checked out and then maybe one day you die and on your deathbed you're like, oh, I never actually paid attention. Check in. Take a deep breath. You're going to get through it. You've already gotten through all the other bullshit you've gone through, right? You're still here. You're still kicking it. So just take a breath. You're going to get through it. And just, again, I think with this week and as we get to the coming weeks, it's one step at a time. You got to take one step at a time. You got to take each day at a time. That's the only way to live life. Because if you're trying to live life for the future, a lot, you can make plans all day long. My ascendant ruler is in Capricorn. I love making plans. But typically plans don't usually work. They're nice, and you should make plans, but you also have to be open to adapting. You have to know that those plans don't always work, and you have to take things day by day, step by step, because that's all you can do as a human being. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. This was a really long horoscope. Become a patron. If you want to know what October is going to be like for you, I do monthly horoscopes for the zodiac signs on my Patreon. I don't know how many people need to hear that if they don't know that already. But check those out. They're going to be posted this week as well. Also, too, for the people that are listening to the very end, shout out to you. I meant to say this in the beginning, but I'm doing a Venus in retrograde video. But I posted on my Patreon a video about what happened the last 2 times Venus retrograded in Capricorn. And I was doing it as sort of building up, like evidence of what my predictions are going to be. And I found a ton of stuff, and it was so much information that I couldn't just put it in a short video. It's like an hour and a half long video of literally me talking about what happened the last 2 times Venus station retrograde in Capricorn. If you're curious about that and you want, because I think I'm also going to be putting much more exclusive content on my Patreon because I kind of want to. But if you're looking into that, if you want to know more about that, go over to my Patreon as well. If you want access to these horoscopes early and commercial free, go over to my Patreon. Anyway, with that being said, I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you again. I truly love and appreciate every single one of you guys. I'll see you next week.